And we're live. Hello and welcome to the 113th episode of Hex Therapy Live. I'm your host, Maddie ALLin. We've got a great show for you tonight. I'm going to be talking about what is Genesis Pulse Hex and how can you hold on to it? What should you be thinking about when it comes to how often you're checking the price these days and so much more. Thanks for being here. Hit the like and subscribe button. And let's get started.
It's from Maddie ALLin of HexTherapy.live. I like Maddie. Maddie tries to make the world a healthier place. He's a mental health professional. He's done research.
Big videos on sudden wealth syndrome.
There's nothing that a human being could do better than try and heal his fellow man.
Maddie ALLin's got that covered. He does emotional, feel-good, mind management, emotion stuff like as his gig because he's a therapist. That's what he does for a living. Like he helps heal people.
Now, it's been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of days since anybody has seen Genesis Hex available. But when Pulse Chain finally launches, we don't know when it'll be, but when Pulse Chain comes out, everybody who has been moving Hex around will have a second chance. And I think that's remarkable. That's why I put that on the thumbnail and I made it the topic of tonight's Hex Therapy. Yes, I have been streaming every Thursday night for 113 weeks, but we're trying to keep it fresh here. Thanks for tuning in. Hit the like and subscribe button. Let me know what your questions are in the comments. I'll be streaming here for 10, 20, 30 minutes, maybe an hour, and just want to address all the topics and have a good episode of Hex Therapy. Now, I did tease a little bit in our episode of Game Theory Gang earlier this week. I teased a little bit that I'd have some personal stories to share on Hex Therapy this week. And I think, as far as I could tell, the people who wanted to share them are not ready yet with their stories, but as we know, people who are involved in Hex, a lot of us are people who time lock. And time locking is a pretty cool thing because it gives people a chance to have a 4-dimensional relationship with yourself, to pay your future self, to be able to count on money being there for you in the future. And the tricky thing is that you don't know how much it'll be worth. You don't know what your Hex will be worth in the future. But even with that uncertainty, which is kind of interesting because, of course, the dollar loses its purchasing power every year to inflation, and other currencies around the world, half the people who watch this channel are watching from another country other than the United States, those currencies are devalued even quicker. And so when on a long enough time frame, what we see is that people who picked the right crypto, like Bitcoin or Ethereum or a handful of others in a sea of bad deals, those cryptos, even though they did the normal 10x up and then 95% down, those cryptos survived. And so being in a surviving crypto and being able to hodl, that is how you get crypto right, in my opinion. And, you know, if we're looking at the purchasing power of Bitcoin, you know, here's my Bitcoin shirt. I put $20 into Bitcoin before I even understood what it was. And, you know, that Bitcoin today is worth about $1,000. And so we can see that picking the right crypto and being able to hold on to it, that's the trick. And so being able to time lock is kind of like a superpower. And what I've heard from a lot of people, and I love hearing these stories, is that people who have a history of addiction, people who are working on their mental health, or people who are just interested in self-improvement in general are finding themselves having better experiences, having a different psychology about them when they time lock, when they have something to look forward to in the future that, you know, whether it's time locking their Hex or some other means of improving themselves and paying your future self. I find it all very fascinating. And as I said, people have been sharing their stories. And so if you have a story to share, make a testimonial video or reach out to me on Twitter or Telegram. And every once in a while, I check my messages on there. And I would love to discover your story. There's also a number of other people who you can reach out to who speak to me more regularly and check their messages more regularly, or just come into the live stream. I'm here twice a week. So we got Melf Tony in the chat saying that the price of HEX today is 2.6 cents. And that'll be a topic here to talk about a little bit later, is how often should you be checking the price of crypto? Should you be checking it multiple times a day, or are those trading habits better to get away from? Now, I'm not singling out Melf Tony at all, because we really appreciate him keeping us updated in the chat, really for historical purposes, if nothing else. So we know that there are a lot of really cool stories out there that people are going to probably share sooner or later that is related to the topic of hex therapy in general, which is this idea that you can potentially change your own behavior by time locking, and that might mean something different to each different person who's doing it. And that's probably a good thing. We don't want centralized control. The whole point of crypto is to decentralize certain things and to maximize trust. And so that reminds me, if you're not following me on Twitter, what are you doing? And if you're not following me on YouTube, what are you doing? Because those are the places that I post every day. If you looked in the pinned messages or the pinned comments here on YouTube, you'll find my Telegram. It's 5 members away from being 1,000, and people who want to follow what I'm doing every day, I usually post in there once a day, and it's a channel, so you don't get spammed or anything. But that's t.me/smartvaultme. So back to this idea of what is Genesis pHEX. Well, I guess I'm defining it as any hex that gets copied over onto Pulse Chain. Pulse Chain is going to be the largest airdrop in crypto history, and whenever you get your free copy of hex over there on Pulse Chain, I would define Genesis pHEX as anything that you don't move, you don't sell, even if it's staked. If it's staked or not staked, doesn't matter for the Genesis categorization. And we talk about, Genesis Bitcoin is Bitcoin that has been mined either directly onto like a collectible coin, or has been mined into a wallet that shows that it's never moved. It doesn't have a transaction history, only that it's been mined. And then Genesis Ethereum, is from their early days, again, defined as Ethereum that's never moved. In Hex, you have the staking dimension. And so I would define Genesis pHEX as any hex that is staked or that hasn't moved, that was copied over liquid. And that's really exciting. But it makes you think, if the price of pHEX is going to be way higher than the price of eHEX, it begs the question, how will you control yourself? How will you make sure that you don't sell all of your hex too early? And what a lot of people do is they make staking ladders. And that seems to be a really good strategy. And then remember, those of you who've been following the channel or following Hex for 2 or 3 years now, we can see on the chain that not everybody is rebuying their T-shares. So there are people who know that the best practice is to have a perpetual staking ladder and to live off the interest and the airdrops. Now, not everybody's that lucky to be able to do that, but I'm just reminding the OGs here. We can see on chain, Crispy made a tool to show basically who's rebuying their T-shares and who's not. And once I saw that tool, that made me want to rebuy my T-shares. Now I'm even thinking about rebuying my T-shares a little bit early. So that's a pretty big change. And, something to take note of, because the price of a T-share only goes up. It started at 10,000 hex per T-share. That was 1,152 days ago. And now the price of a 1-day t-shirt is 25,629 hex. And so that's, that's a 2.5 increase on top of the price increase. And so that's pretty notable for people who are even considering their own wealth in hex terms, who are using hex as their unit of account, or using t-shares as your unit of account. That's it's pretty cool. But in the future, like I said, we are going to have to decide whether our unit of account, how we're valuing our bags, whether it's on the pHEX side of things or the Pulse T-share side of things, or not. And so that'll be really interesting to see. Any guests today, Maddie? Normally I do Hex Therapy as a solo show, so I can continue to improve my skills as a solo broadcaster. And then Tuesday nights, I always have guests. That's why the show is named Gang. Well, it started off as Quant Gang, short for quantitative. And now it's Game Theory Gang. We just had our 45th episode yesterday, or 2 days ago. So yeah, every once in a while I have a guest on Hex Therapy. You can you can scroll back, and that's a big deal. So let's see who else. Hex Force One, good to see you. Good to see me. It's go time. That's right. Susie Q. Hey, wonderful Maddie. Shout out to you. So much gratitude and appreciation for you, Maddie. Hey, my pleasure. Int Pro. Crypto Compassion, Blackaroni. Good to see you all here. So yeah, I mean, the concept for tonight is pretty straightforward. The idea is, what will you do with your Genesis pHEX? Will you hodl it? Will you time lock it? Will you turn it into Genesis P T-shares? Or will you not rebuy your T-shares? Will you sell hex on the next pump or the next dump, whichever you prefer, and then not dollar cost average out over time, right? And everybody's in a different financial situation, but the thing that makes hex unique is the trustless APY, is the ability to time lock with a community that is the largest. How does one from Ted Cash? Thing all you do, how does one rebuy T-shares? So the idea of how T-shares work is that the price goes up every day to make sure that shorter stakes don't pay more. It's part of the math of actually hex being economically audited, and so the price of a T-share is always going to go up to make it so that if you have a short stake, you can't get more than somebody who staked longer. The idea is longer pays better. And you can learn about this more actually in great detail if you go to my website, allmylinks.com/allin, and scroll down to the audit section. And you can see there has been a hex audit. And it also, you could actually, a better place to see it would be at allmylinks.com/allin, the Hex Layman's Guide written by Dev Kyle, and also the Hex Layperson's Guide written by Nerd Girl are both linked there, and they will explain why longer pays better, how the equation works, how the penalties work, all that good kind of stuff. So rebuying T-shares, the idea is, let's say I have a yearly staking ladder, and I do, and I have hex coming out every year on my birthday. Well, whenever I get my liquid hex coming out on my birthday, that's the point where then I need to decide, because those T-shares have now ended, am I going to rebuy my T-shares? And the price that I paid a year, 2 or 3 years ago is always lower in hex terms than I could buy T-shares now. And so what this does is it allows people to create longer stakes to get the same number of T-shares, or to just get less T-shares and therefore less hex per day minted from inflation. And so that is, it's a pretty innovative system, and it checks out. And So the way that people rebuy their t-shirts is by restaking liquid hex that comes out of a stake that has reached its maturity. You always want to be careful not to end a stake early because it can penalize you the entire principal if you're not careful. So always be careful to make sure that the stake is all the way ended. And I made a front end that is complementary to go.hex.com/stake. And the name of my front end is go.tshare.app. Pulse Chain Maxi here. Welcome, Justin Gardner. Tin Top, how's it going? Thanks for the prayers, Susie Q. Yeah, I hope I feel better soon too. I love Hex Talk. There isn't enough of it these days. Well, that's a great screen name. Thank you. What's going on, Lazy Hexican? So, any other questions are welcome. Remember, there's always new angles. One thing I wanted to talk about today, and if you're enjoying this, hit the like and subscribe button. Share this out to somebody who would benefit from it. Maybe a Hexican who's lost their way. One of the things I want to talk about tonight is how often do you check the price? And this is something Nerd Girl talked about at the Hex conference, and something that I've heard her speak on before. And I think for me, checking the price really doesn't affect my mood because 97 to 98% of my Hex is staked in the long term. And so if the price goes down a lot, then I'm excited because I might be able to buy a little bit more with my Hedron airdrops coming in all the time that I can sell. So I can buy a little bit more Hex than, more than normal when the price goes down. When the price goes up, then that's cool too, because I know that that's the best advertising for Hex possible. And what will lead to its further adoption is when it gets listed on coin ranking websites and when everybody sees, especially the people who are already tuned in. The people who are already tuned in, there are probably hundreds of people who have become millionaires or made hundreds of thousands of dollars in Hex. And some of those people, they dollar cost average out at the top. And they're sitting on the sidelines with liquid stable coins, liquid dollars, and they're waiting to buy back in because they want to buy the bottom. Nobody ever knows when the bottom is going to be, and not everybody can buy it. Because if everybody bought it all at once, then it wouldn't be the bottom. So that's So that's really, I would say the way to look at it is if it is affecting your mood or if it is changing your behavior in a negative way, then that's when it's a good time to start experimenting with not checking the price for a day or not checking the price for an hour. Just see how that affects you. And, even if you think you're fine, even if you think it doesn't affect you, it would still be a good practice to not check the price every day if you're one of those people who it's interesting. And look, there are legitimate, non-emotional, non-addictive reasons to check the price. I mean, some of us are in it for the tech. I'm building something that has to do with time locking, pulse chain, and pulse Hex. So I can legitimately say it's not a meme. I'm in it for the tech. And the best way to know if something changed in the tech is if the price changed. I mean, that's one of the reasons why it's the best advertising is because the price is probably the easiest way to check and see if Pulse Chain V3 came out yet, like if there's a new rumor that people are buying and selling. But the other thing that I want to remind you about the price these days is that the liquidity is low. And we've talked about this a lot before. And if you weren't there, I'll remind you. Or if you weren't there, then listen up. Low liquidity is a blessing and a curse. And the more long-term minded you are, the less you care what the liquidity is. And maybe if you're in a coin like Hex that has lots of specific attributes They make it way different than another low liquidity coin. That's, there's definitely a really, really, really strong case to be made that that there are certain circumstances where you do want low liquidity. Basically, low liquidity is telling you that there's not a huge whale that's trying to sell. In some cases, I would say, because the typical situation is people would buy into something. I mean, let's just take some random altcoin in the Hex ecosystem, even like that's based off Hex or something. If there's only, I mean, I'll pick on some of the Maximus DAO ones because those have lower liquidity, and maybe Lucky or Base or something, like some of those have only like $5,000 or $10,000 worth of liquidity, and so the price. And those are different. Those are actually cool because they're backed by Hex and they represent shares of wrapped Hex stakes. And so if you just see it to maturity, then it will be worth more than the discount it's trading for now. But the idea is that when you have a low liquidity situation, the price can pump more on something. And maybe you don't want whales getting out. Maybe you do. Maybe the perfect situation in Hex is set up right now where people are literally eating maximum slippage. People are pushing the price against themselves and getting less dollars out. And the people who are buying are getting more Hex because of the liquidity situation. And so if you've never watched a video that explains how liquidity works, a really, really good topic educated on, maybe an education series at some point about liquidity specifically, because it's really what makes the world go round. I mean, the dollar is, some people would say that the dollar is even backed in petroleum and in oil, because that's kind of like the energy sector that the world runs on. People talk about the petrodollar. So so that's a whole series that I could probably talk about for probably 4 to 12 hours. And so I'm not going to get completely into it now because I think it would be a good topic to take an organized approach to. But it's a reminder, if you're checking the price all the time, the price is being affected by low liquidity and it's bouncing around way more than normal. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind that moving the price is very easy right now, and that in the future there will probably be more liquidity added. You can see by going on HexDailyStats.com. You can see how much liquidity is there now and every other day in the history of Hex, going back about 1,150 days. Around the time of the all-time high on day 656, the amount of liquidity that was there, I would say it was over $30 million. If you add up not only the USDC liquidity, but also the Ethereum liquidity. Now we're sitting closer at $1 million or $2 million. So what that means is that it's way easier for the price to pump. It's way easier for the price to dump. People who are market selling are going to eat slippage. People who are setting limit orders are not going to eat slippage. So if somebody needs to sell hundreds of thousands of dollars of Hex, they better do it responsibly, or else they'll pay a price, and they'll pay thousands and thousands of dollars, many percentages, if they try to dump millions of dollars. And that's advantageous in a lot of ways. Also, the price can theoretically pump higher with low liquidity because there's not so much weight to the amount that's sitting there automatically being sold on the automated market maker. So there you go. I also, another thing that is keeping my mind busy these days is not only developing Time Pays Me, which last week, 1 week ago, I did an episode where the second half of it was showing the private testnet for people to be able to time lock Ethereum and Pulse Chain. Actually, come to think of it, I need to check right now and see if our front end, our old front end, is still up, because it's been now 7 days. It's been 7 days, and so it's time to undo a hack. Well, it's the reason that the 7-day hold is there is to be able to undo a hack. And it's funny. It's not funny, but it's crazy to me that I still see tons of stories on Twitter, and I've got a bookmark folder going for all these high profile cases of people getting hacked. I mean, if you think even a month ago, one of the 5 Bitcoin core developers got hacked for all of his money. That's a problem. And then one of those bankless guys, Sean Ryan Adams or something, he was promoting a story of somebody getting hacked for millions of dollars that was a dev just in the past day or so. So it's wild to me that nobody has figured this out yet. And I guess I'm the one who figured it out, that just simply putting a 7-day hold on doing withdrawals makes a lot of sense when there are a lot of people who are in crypto for the long term or even the short term, but they don't need access to their funds right away. And then that's where it kind of wraps back around to Hex Therapy, because a hacker isn't the only one who can let you down. It could also be your future self in a moment of weakness. And so that's why I like how Hex, or how Time Pays Me, is going to allow people to time lock, because whether you're time locking Hex or Ethereum or Pulse Chain or pHEX or whatever token it is, you only need one moment of clarity in order to reap the benefits for years into the future. And then, but if you're holding liquid and if you're getting hacked, then you only need one moment of weakness, whether it's weakness in your security or weakness in your own decision making, and then that can ruin, that can ruin your experience with crypto. It can ruin the decision to get into the right crypto. It can lead to bad things. So that's why I'm so excited about staying busy with that, and I'm working on a Hex meetup and just all kinds of stuff. So, you know what they say about bear markets, time to build in a bear. Okay, so I'm in Time Pays Me. I am on the Pulse Chain testnet, and I'm on our front end. I think the developers I'm working with have been updating some things, so I won't be able to show the billion Pulse tokens that I requested to withdraw last week, but yeah, we'll get to it. We can put back up the old front end, and then I'll be able to show that off. But yeah, been staying busy. Hey, Bristology, good to see you there. Talking about Kevin Rose. Yeah, that's right. I guess Kevin Rose is some online entertainer or something. Nice hat, thanks. I always think, this is somebody in the comments, I always think something to be excited about is how much larger our followers / holders / staker community is now versus back at the all-time high. The potential during the next bull market, the network effect, seems really amazing. Yeah, and I just watched a video earlier today from somebody I subscribed to on YouTube, who I've seen on Twitter before, and he was making a great case about the network effect in Hex and in pHEX and all these other tokens. V3 Uniswap seems to be more like a centralized order book, since you can place your liquidity in areas. Does that kind of hinder the ability for massive pumps? in short, yes. The YouTube channel that I would recommend with short videos that explain the difference between V2 and V3 liquidity, for those of you who want to get ahead of, I guess, the next course or special episode I'm going to do. Finematics is the name of the YouTube channel. I'll try to link it at the end of the video. Hey, that reminds me. If you ever stick around to the last 10 seconds of a video, I always link a particular video that I referenced in the show. And I know whether it's Game Theory Gang getting 3,000 people watching each week now, or Hex Therapy Live, which has historically gotten 1,000 to 2,000 or 3,000 viewers each week. It might be something that you didn't know, is that, for example, tonight, after the live stream ends, YouTube has to process the video quickly. So it's usually about 20 minutes after I end the live stream. So for the majority of people that are watching, who watch on the replay, there's going to be a special link just for you that I've selected because it's something that I referenced. So every time I do a live stream, I try to reference a video and then put it in the link at the end. So that's cool. That's adding a lot of value. So if you don't stick around until the end, or you could fast forward to the end and just see what it is. So if I had time lock coin A for 10 years with your product, would that not be taken away from money that could be used to buy HEX since it's locked? I think that, I mean, that's an interesting question. And I think at the end of the day, let's take the case study of the person that follows me on Twitter, who's the most memed person for selling Bitcoin in the history of Bitcoin, Greg Sean. He put $100 into Bitcoin in 2011, and then he sold on a 5X. And he bought 1,700 Bitcoin, and he sold 1,700 Bitcoin. Okay. And today that would be worth $10.5 million. If he had time locked it for, I can't remember what I guess if he had time locked it for 20 years, then he would have gotten $10.5 million worth of dollars out, because there's a monthly or a weekly drip that you can take. And then he would still have $10.5 million of HEX or of Bitcoin left. And he might have been able to free claim HEX along the way. How cool is that? Now, he couldn't have used my product because there was no wrapped Bitcoin back in those days, and there was no time pays me back in those days. But to answer your question, I think the unintuitive answer is that actually there would be more money to buy HEX, because otherwise people would just sell every tiny little pump that exists. And people are not good at holding on to their money, especially in cryptocurrency. I mean, you could pick the right thing, and even if you pick the best thing possible, you're more than likely going to be tempted to sell on a 5X or 10X or 50X or 500X, and you're going to miss out on the $1,000,000X or the 5 million X or more in the future. So, it shouldn't, I don't think it should be measured in the worst case scenario, but I've heard people say that they are interested in allocating 2%, 5%, 10%, 50% of their bag into, something that is going to be there for them. It's going to drip out over time, and it's going to have all those advantages. So, great question, though. Yeah, I appreciate people asking the good questions. Academaciated. Good to see you there. Great username. Not sure if I'm saying it right, but I think I get the joke. So if you go to allmylinks.com/allin, that is where you will find all the cool stuff I'm working on. It's a huge list, probably 50 links there. That'll keep you busy. And other than that, yeah, thanks for tuning in. These episodes of Hex Therapy Live have been going for about half an hour to an hour for the past few weeks. And of course, Game Theory Gang, 2 to 3 hours on Tuesday nights. And, it was just 2 or 3 weeks ago that we did the Hex conference where we did 6 hours a night. And if you haven't gone back and seen all of that, all of those shows, go to hexconference.com, look up who the speakers are on which days, or go surf around on YouTube and check out the parts that you didn't see yet. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I'm going to do my outro music here. The rest of the reminders. So remember to take care of yourself, tell people you love them, wear your seatbelt, and until next time, stake wisely, my friends, and peace out.